the face that launched 1,000 ships. That's what everyone remembers of Helen. When tourists come tromping up the slopes of Mount Ida, smelling insect repellent and sunscreen, they try to outdo one another in the retelling of the ancient stories of this place, piecing together tales from fragments of memory from the school books of childhood. I hear them tell Paris's story, cast out by Priam, raised by a she-bear, judge of the fateful beauty pageant. They seldom mention me, Oenone, his first wife, or if they do, it's always the rumor of my death. Homer tossed me on Paris's funeral pyre. Bacchylides threw me from a cliff. Another tied a rope around my neck, and yet another hurled me from the walls of Troy. These are not my story. These are stories told by men who understand little in the ways of women, whether human or nymph. A man should love a woman and end up broken-hearted. It is not the nymph's nature to love one and only one. Her heart is not a human heart. Her life is not a human's life. She will never die or grow old. A man to a nymph should be a toy, a brief distraction from the tedium of life without end. But to me, Paris was all. With Paris, I felt time for the first time, understood the preciousness of every moment, feared the inevitable loss of outliving my love. How I worried over him. At first he laughed and called me mother, gently chiding me. Then, when I bore him a son, he called me mother tenderly. But I was too much mother and not enough lover, too much agape and not enough eros, and he left me on my mountainside, left me in the shade of the olive trees, left me for lust, and incited a war. Oh, Paris, vainglorious fool, you had everything when you were with me. In the forever of my existence, I will never understand why my love wasn't enough. When he came back to beg my help, he already had one foot in Hades. He thought my herbs would spare him, but they only would have prolonged his suffering. When I looked into his bloodshot eyes, I was tempted to give him what he sought, so I could watch him endure the misery he had brought upon himself. First he abandoned me, then our son followed him to war, and then he had the audacity to beg me for his life. For a long time I wished I had never met Paris. But that day when I looked Paris in the eye and saw him approaching death, fearfully, yes, but without regret, I understood that I, too, would do it all again if I could. If I could travel back in time to the day I met Paris, even knowing how it would all turn out, I would love him again. So I let him go. I let him die not out of cruelty, but out of love. Despite it all, I loved him. I let him go, though I must stay here forever, nymph of the mountain, watching tourists with their selfie sticks and blaring pop music, with their mixed-up versions of the old stories, versions that have erased me entirely. I know that when he went to the land of the dead, he drank from the river of forgetfulness. All of his folly, all of his suffering, all of the hurt he caused washed away by death. And what of love? Must that too be forgotten? Perhaps even the Lethe cannot wash away the memory of love. But here, on my mountain,